So, do you hear me well? Do you see me well?
Yep. Yes. Yes.
Thanks, guys. So, hello and welcome, everyone. It's amazing to see so many of you here today on our Vue.js Talks number 9, our monthly meetup where we explore not only what's new in the Vue ecosystem, but also broader topics in front-end development, tooling, architecture, and real-world dev workflows. Whether you building your Vue.js application since Options API days, or you just scaffolded your first front-end project last week and still get excited when Ref magically updates your UI, you're in the right place. We are all here to learn, to share, level up together, and I'm genuinely glad you made the time to join us today. So I'm Pavel from Epicmax, the team behind Vuestic UI, a UI framework we built entirely on Vue 3. Is the foundation we use to ship products faster, maintain cleaner code bases, and build consistent interfaces without reinventing the component wheel every time. So we launched Vue.js Talks because we felt there is a gap, a space where Vue devs could connect regularly, share real-world experience, and talk about not just what's cool in the docs, but actually what's working in practice. So here we are, meetup number 9, and as always, we've got a killer lineup of speakers today who are ready to dive into practical knowledge you can use right away. So let's move on. Our today's agenda is Rayan Azzam with his mobile development with Vue, Alexander Opalic, how to test Vue Composables, and Andrii Bohdanov, best practices of not writing CSS in Vite Front Ends. So let's move to our first speaker. It's Rayan. Rayan is a full-stack developer at Vue School, also certified Vue.js developer, and passionate about shaping digital experiences and lead tech teams. Nice to see you, Rayan, there.
Hey, nice to see you.
The stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you first for this presentation. I'm Rayan Azzam, as I mentioned, a full-stack developer, and let's first share my screen to let you know what we cover today. My entire screen, this one, okay, sure. Okay. Is it clear?
Yep, all good.
Yes. Okay, sorry. This is my first time with. Okay, let's get back to this one. Okay. So today is my first talk in the Vue talk. We're going to build a real mobile application with Vue and Ionic. So I'm Rayan Azzam, and I'm glad to be here at the Vue talk. I'm a full-stack developer at Vue School, and before that, I will tell you my story. I was a freelancer for many years, so I have to work with different type of customers and different type of projects. So one time, a customer asked me to develop a solution for his business, and after 2 or 3 months, he asked me, why you can't just make a mobile app for me? Okay, it was that time 2015 or 14, so the only thing that I thought about was Java, and all of us know how Java is easy. So I tried to learn some Java and try to kick off my first mobile application native with Java. So it was a nightmare, and I have spent more than 5 months learning all about those things and complex things. So, but I fell in love with the mobile application. In general, I don't do it as a main job, but in side projects, I love be working with those kind of things. So what we'll cover today. First, we will talk why we build a mobile application using Vue. We'll give a brief introduction to Ionic and Capacitor and how they work together to create a real native apps. I'll give a brief comparison between Ionic and Quasar, as it's another famous cross-platform. I'll give a real-world development workflow, the limitation you have to be aware of when using Ionic or cross-platform. And I will give a real demo about a application that I have built now, and after that we'll make a QA. So why we use Ionic and Vue? Simply because you are already a Vue developer, you can use your skill in Vue to build a real and native like Android and iOS apps. So no need for Swift or Kotlin or Java to build them. Build once and publish everywhere. As we know, cross-platform helps you publish on iOS and Android. So a quick workflow example, how Ionic and Vue will work together. You have to build your Vue app, then install Capacitor, add iOS and Android platform support, then sync your project, and you can open your Android Studio or Xcode, depending on what platform you are deploying to, and enjoy run your application. So what is this? You use the Vue and the Ionic as a UI toolkit, helping the Capacitor to connect with the iOS and Android hardware or features for those hardwares. Okay, talking a lot about Ionic. What is Ionic in general, to sum up? Ionic is a powerful toolkit, mobile-ready component. As we talk about Vuestic or Vuetify, they are a UI toolkit for building web apps. Ionic is specified, or it's very specific about components, as it's give you a native-like apps and is optimized to use with mobile. And you can use those tags from the Ionic, like Ion button, Ion tabs, and Ion model. Let's jump to a example how the Ionic UI will help you build a native-like. Here, I grabbed some example from the Ionic document to let you know how the native app will be if you use Ionic to build it. If we run this one, look at this. We are using here the iOS model. You feel like you are using really an iOS native app. Look at this. And here you can switch to see how it will be with material design. And with Ionic, the ability to switch between them, it depends on where, if you build to Android, so then it will choose the material design. And if you use the iOS, then the iOS will be the default. Otherwise, you can stick to one. So you can force your app to be built with iOS by default or by MDE, or you can let the Ionic to decide in which platform you are working. Let's see another example here. Look at this. It's amazing, and it's switching depends on the platform. And look at this Polter Fresh as well. It's taking the Android behavior, and here's give you an iOS like. Okay, great. Okay, why Ionic for business owner, or why for a sole developer or freelancers? To be honest, no need to UI designer as much at the beginning. You don't want to spend a lot of money making those Figma and then converting them to the HTML and those tailwinds and those things. You can just make some sketch, some mockups, and you can pick your the components from the Ionic framework document or general document, and you can put in your code and run your code in a very fast cycle with development, as you are working with modern JavaScript frameworks like Vue, Angular, and React. So this is a very good and powerful thing for Ionic and cross-platforms in general. So the second thing we're going to talk about is the Capacitor. The Capacitor is the mind. It's the bridge between your UI, your logic, your web, and the native behavior. So if you want to interact with the camera of the mobile, so you have to click a button in your UI, and then you have to make this camera works. So what is the native thing here? This is the Capacitor. It makes a bridge between your UI or your web and the hardware or the mobile app. And here is, let's take an example, how we can maybe take a photo from the camera of the mobile. We just have to import this camera from the Capacitor library, waiting for getting the photo from the mobile with the quality, with the editing, with a lot of options. And then you can use this photo in your Vue app as you want. You can store it, upload it to server, whatever you want. Let's take another example, getting the geolocation from the mobile. Here, just you are waiting for the geolocation plugin to call the geolocation service in your mobile application. You can try catch it as you're dealing with a function in your Vue application. Look how amazing and easy is this. So we have to talk about Cordova, because Cordova is the old warrior and it served a lot of time. And Capacitor is the modern alternative to Cordova. It uses, as we see here, the promises, they await a sync, and it gives us a lot of more performance, and is actively maintained by Ionic team, which is the most amazing thing. And it supports custom native code more easily as you want. When you want to make some native changes, you can open your code in a Xcode or Android Studio and make a lot of changes there. So you can support things that you couldn't do it from your web UI. Okay, everything has a limitation. And as we're talking about cross-platform, and we understand how Capacitor works, so let's talk about limitation. Know when to use those cross-platforms, Ionic and Quasar and those things. So if you're working with like maybe gaming or something which want a high performance, a lot of background processes, you are not good to go with those cross-platform. At the end of the day, you're working inside a web view. So working with backgrounds need a lot of performance, need a lot of things related to the battery, and those things can be handled from the web UI or the web view. So heavy native feature need custom plugins and limitation in performance. And the most important things those days, the size. If you are worrying about your size, so just a to-do list app or hello world app will cost you about 20 to 30 megabytes. And there is a lot of things related to some modification in the native requirement, which make it's harder if you want this. So if you have an e-commerce, you have a blog, you have a listing apps, you are good to go with cross-platforms and Ionic. Okay, just a quick comparison between Quasar and Ionic, and both are amazing cross-platforms. The most important thing with Ionic that it's focused on mobile UI, so it's optimized for this. Quasar works with multiple platforms. You can use it with desktop, web, and PWA. So it's not specific for mobile. So if you are looking for easy to go with mobile, you can go with Ionic. The UI style of Ionic is native, like Android and iOS, as I told you. But Quasar using material design. So you have to make a lot of effort in your UI to modify it to be like a native. The CLI tools are amazing for both cross-platforms, and both are using Capacitor. Ionic is default. You can use Cordova and Quasar. That's in general. There is a lot of difference between how to deal with the code, but in general, that's it. In a conclusion, as a Vue developer or a JS framework, Angular or React, you are about 80% ready to build your mobile. You just have to know how mobile application works in general. And Ionic gives you a mobile, Capacitor gives you the native access and for the features. So as a conclusion, it's perfect for business, social, e-commerce app, and use the native only when you have heavy gaming or AR or something like this. As references for the Ionic, I suppose those 4 references, which are amazing. The Nuxt starter kit by Daniel Roy. Everyone knows who's Daniel. He's a maintainer in Nuxt, and he has an open source to help you start with or kick off with Ionic and Nuxt. The official documents is very easy to go with and very clear. And we have a Nuxt module for Ionic. And the Discord Ionic is very active, and you can ask whenever you want, whatever you want, and you get an answer in 1, 2, 3 days. So it's amazing. That's in general. So a bonus thing, I'm gonna build a full stack course to building from scratch, and for a mobile application with a integration with the back end and all those things. And I will let you know if you can just subscribe here on my website to get in the waiting list, I will be building a full course for this, if you are interested. Thank you for this, and let me jump to the real example, how we can start building a mobile application. Here, first of all, we have a empty Nuxt project, which just scaffolding those things. First thing you have to add to your project, if we can go, I'll let you show how we can start from the documents. So nothing charm here. Let's just go here. This is the Nuxt Ionic integration. You can read about this. It's an easy installation. If you have the Nuxt project, you can just add this Ionic model to it. Let me add it here. And here is the version with the Ionic added, just for time's sake. Here, the Ionic config is added to the project, and this model added to the Nuxt config. So we are using this Nuxt config. And a very important thing, SSR is not here with using Ionic. It's SSR false. So we are working with client side because it's gonna run in the web view mobile application. So there's no server side rendering there. And here you can add Ionic with multiple configuration. As I mentioned, you can force the mode to be material design or iOS, or you can leave it without anything to decide to the capacitor and Ionic decide which to run there. Okay, and here, as we can see, there is a normal Nuxt application. The second thing we have to do is to add, to add the configuration, to add the capacitor. Fortunately, capacitor is integrated with this thing. You have just to enable it. So you have multiple choices how we can go with this or that, and we can go with this. We are adding enabling the capacitor into our project. So we just add here, enabling, and this is a version of project where the capacitor is enabled. Here we can see the capacitor config, which is related to the application, the app name, which will be published on the App Store or Google Play. Here is the package name, as you can see it. You can modify it from here, and here is it. And the other thing that we have to add is, after enabling the capacitor, we have to add the support for the Android or iOS. If you are working just with Android, we can add this. If we are going to work with both, we can add both of this. So what this will do, this, if we run it here, here. It will add a project or folder, which is Android here. Here, you can see a full project Android with written with Java, and when you're working with your code, you will be running a sync command, which will sync your code to this project. So at the end, we have a project, Nuxt, having an Android support, having a capacitor and Ionic support. How we can start working or developing? As we know, Nuxt, I choose Nuxt because it's easy to start. You have those pages, you have the middleware, the easiest thing to start with as a Vue developer. So first of all, I will go to the app.vue and I will take the lead of routing for the Ionic. If you remember, when you go here, let's go back here, and you go to this app.vue before adding the support of Ionic, you have this. You're telling the Nuxt to handle the router by himself. But here I don't want Nuxt to just handling this. I want Ionic to handle. So I will wrap all those things with this Ion app and router outlet. So I'm running now all my code inside the router of the Ionic. So here is I choose to work with this thing, the tabs. The tabs is a very good thing to start with. as I think every application will have those tabs and the bottom. So let's start to run this first at the dev mode, and we can run it right now. Sorry, it's next screen. Okay, here what we can see, if we make the inspect here, and we can see here a tabs. You can see tabs. You can see you are feeling like you are making with its web mobile. Here I put an example about an infinite scroll of items. Look at this. You are making infinite scroll. It's scrolling, and as it's scrolling down, you're loading more data. Here in the photo, I just make an open button. You can open this and see it, how it's work. You're working with a mobile, with a web application now. You can make the development, debugging here, all things in your browser. Okay, you want to see how it feels like in the mobile application? Okay, let's go for it. First of all, let's start by, this is one, start by running the generate. We will generate the code that will be synced or be to be built to the mobile application. Okay, this is first. So we are generating the build code. Then, as we mentioned, here is the folder of the Android. So we have to sync the new code to it. Those are from the document. You have to remember them as I did. Here we are syncing and updating all those dependencies to the Android, and now it's time to run it. You can open it in Android Studio, or you can run it directly to the emulator if you have one. Okay, here I'm running it. He asked me what emulator you want, so I will choose this one. He's running the Gradle as it's done from inside the Android Studio. Okay, deploying, and it's running in a emulator. Sorry, it's on the one. Okay. Okay, that's it. Look at this ripple effects. Look at this performance. So that's just a simple example about how we can use the UI of the Ionic. In the next, I will show you an advanced one, and I'm building now an application that I'm building. It's an advanced one, and the course will be around this application. Just we have to wait. This is one, okay, and just run Android. How it works now. I will show you some codes behind this application. This is a listing application where you can show services. Just wait to run this one. Okay, those listings are all made with Ionic. Okay, I just make some using ChatGPT to make those icons and those colors or those things. And look at how beautiful it feels like you are. This is the infinite scrolling. This is loading from a real server, not dummy data. It's real from real server. You can add the service, and you can show it here right now. And look at, if I click on one of them, you can show the detail. Feels like you're using your iOS or iPhone. You can make a call here, and look at this. If I click here, I'm filtering. I'm using here Pinia to filter. I'm using Pinia as a store. Look at this. Here is he saved my choices. Here I can use the city. If I click here near me, it's gonna load a little bit. It's calling the geolocation service from my emulator to get the location. Okay, so it's amazing thing you can do with just your Vue app. I can here go back and see all those things here. I can reset the filter, and I can maybe go to my account, log in. Okay. I don't think it's a good one, but try to. Okay, so here we can go to my account. I can see my services. I can look at the animation. All those things are amazing. And here I have something to add. If you want to add something maybe special or customized, try to stick to the Ionic. What I mean by that? Here, if I want to log in, he asked me to please fill all in required. So here it's a toast from the Ionic. I didn't go to any package, extra package, and bring it to my code and just integrate it. I tried to integrate the Vue toast from the Ionic. So to keep it native, I can make my own toast, but when you stick to the UI framework, it will get amazing end results, as you can see here. So that's in general. I hope you like this presentation. It's a brief, and to be honest, I'm new to Ionic. It's just about 1 or 2 mobile applications I worked with, but I love working with this more. And thank you all. I'm ready if you have any question.
Well, first of all, thanks, Ryan, for your debut. Congrats with that.
Thank you.
And that was a really structured and informative presentation. Thank you. So
Thank you.
We actually have a few questions already in the chat. The first one I see is from Andrii. What do you think about native script view?
So what is the question in the messages?
It's from Andrii. I suppose.
My question is like, what do you think about native script view? Because basically it also allows to write native applications.
No idea about that. I told you, I'm new to those things, so I pick Ionic because I love the way they're working and the huge team behind this framework. So I will give it a shot, this one.
Yeah, because native script view probably will give you even better performance.
Okay, great. Thank
you. Much closer to the native.
Okay, great one.
Okay, another one we have is from Evgeny. Curious if performance is still far from native approach or it's getting closer?
To be honest, it's like native. When you're working with stick to UI toolkit from the Ionic, as I mentioned later, you can get a native like I give a application to a real mobile application, not a fake one like me, and he told me it's a native, but I told him no, it's Ionic, it's not a native. Yeah, it's to give you a real feel about native when you're working with those kind of applications. Of course, more games and the background processes. It's far from that.
Okay, thank you. Another one from Maxim. Is it possible to create the widgets for Android iOS screens?
Yes, that's thing that I was talking about. It's not very easy to do with this because you are running at the end of the day inside the web view. So web view has not a lot of access to the hardware features of the widgets for Ionic, for iOS or Android. So when you're talking about those things, you can go to native. It's easier. You'll spend ages just trying to modify or reading documents how to do it. Personally, I didn't give it a shot, but I hear about it's very hard to maintain.
Okay, thank you. Another one from Evgeny. With Nuxt Ionic, would we precompile something for iOS Android? Would also guess the Nuxt part is mostly useful for web.
Where is this question?
Right over your cursor, yeah.
Nuxt would be pre-compile something. Yeah. You'll get a native. Sorry, can I show them or we don't have time?
Yeah, I think we still have some time for that.
Yeah, just I missed this one. If we try here just to mpx cap. Instead of run, we can open Android. So here, before running in the emulator, you will be having a project running on Android, and you can see your native code. And here, to be honest, I made some changes in the Android manifest. I added this network security config to make it work with the API without HTTPS. So yes, we have full project.
Cool. Okay, I think we have a last one from Vitaly. In the Expo framework from React Native, you can scan a QR code to open the app on your device, not an emulator. Does Ionic support this feature?
Scan QR code, open your app on your device, not emulator. I don't have an idea, but I will try to do it.
Well, maybe we should find someone who will explain those kind of things on our next talks. That would be also
yeah, awesome.
So yeah, thanks, Rayan. We don't have any more questions, and we have to move on to our next speaker now.
Thank you so much.
So our next speaker is Alexander Opalic. He's a full stack developer with 7 years of expertise, specializing in Vue, based near Munich, working at Auto Payments now, maintains a blog focused on Vue-related topics where they regularly share insight and technical guides. I believe you will share a link for it. And passionate about continuous learning and knowledge sharing. So passing microphone to you, Alexander. Hello.
Yeah, thank you. I will present my presentation. As always, the first question here, I hope you can see my screen. Good, then let's start. Yeah, today, my first time here in this cool meetup. And I will talk about how to test Vue Composables. And yeah, I already got a nice introduction. Yeah, and yeah, if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out. I'm also active on X, so you can also check my blog post. And yeah, before we talk about how we test Vue Composables, I think it's important to define what a composable is and that we all speak the same language. Because I don't know if you were ever in a project where you had a discussion with other developers what the difference is between a utility or a composable. And yeah, I think in Vue projects, it's important that we know what the difference is, because they maybe look the same, but yeah. That's why, yeah, what is a composable? A composable is a function, but what is important is that it's also importing things from Vue. One thing could be just be the reactivity part, but it's not only reactivity, it's also life cycles and provide and inject. And yeah, reactivity, I think everyone, when you start with Vue, you understand this cool concept that if I click here, and the count is 8, somehow magically it will be 16. And yeah, this here is a composable. So we use Vue reactivity and then we return the values. And yeah, that's why it's important to understand only because a developer is using the name use, this is not directly a composable. Yeah. On the left side is just a regular JavaScript function, not reactive. And on the right side, we have a composable, and which is reactive. Yeah, now let's talk about testing. Of course, yeah, we use Vitest. Vite and Vitest is Azzam, and this is our framework that we use for testing. And also, I think what is important to understand is when we talk about composable, where they are in the testing pyramid. Yeah, this is the Vue Testing Pyramid. This is from the Vue documentation. So they basically say we have unit tests, we have component tests, and end-to-end tests. End-to-end test means that, yeah, we would use a real browser, we would use the real APIs, And then, of course, we have component tests, and also we have unit tests. And composables are in the category of unit tests. You could also test a component that is using a composable, and then it would be a component test. But if you want to test a composable in isolation, then it's a unit test. Yeah. So I think also important to understand. And then I think what also helps when you test composables is there are two types. So I call them first independent composables. There are composables that are only using ref, computed, and watch. But there are also dependent composables that use the lifecycle hooks like mounted or provide and inject. And I think by the end of my talk, you will understand why I named them like that. That's why let's talk about independent composables. Yeah, as I said, they use the reactivity part, and they are also easy to test. Because if you have a typical useCounter composable, yeah, because I think when you do a presentation, you either use to-do or counter to explain something. But yeah, we have here this useCounter composable. And yeah, it's importing a ref and computed. And this is kind of easy to test. The only difference to a utility is that we need to have a ref. And then the use will be reactive. And yeah, this is, I think, the easy to test composable. Dependent composables could be a bit more trickier. They can also use the reactivity part of Vue, but they either also use lifecycles or provide and inject. And the tricky part is that they won't work in isolation. They need a component as a context to work. That's why one example, useLocalStorage. If you ever used Vue, really awesome library for Vue, they also have a useLocalStorage. I just created a really simple version out of that to explain testing. So we have useLocalStorage. Local storage, if you don't know what this is, in a browser, if you want to persist state, one way could be to save it in a local storage. But the annoying thing is, if you don't have this nice helper composable, that, yeah, you need to have some boilerplate code to always sync your Vue ref to the local storage. That's why the first thing that this composable is doing, when the component mounts, it will check if the key exists, and then it will set it to the ref. And the other cool thing is, if you change a ref, the watch will be triggered and it will save the local storage all the time. So we kind of abstract the whole local storage logic, and our component or composable, we only manipulate refs. So here, the special thing is, as I said, we use the onMounted. That's why when we try to test it, first simple test would be to just see if the default values are working. This test would work, yeah, fine. But now, if we want to also test that our composable is using the correct value out from local storage, this would not work. Yeah. So we would get an error. And the reason, as I said, is that onMounted would not be executed, because onMounted needs a component to run. Yeah? If you have a composable in isolation, the onMounted will not run. That's why, yeah, it's for testing, it's important to understand if you have a composable that is using life cycles, we need to give it a component as a context. And yeah, also maybe you think now one way it could also be to create a faker component and then to use this composable. But I think this is a bit annoying. That's why there's a cool way also, I think it's on the Vue docs, with a helper function. It's called useSetup. And the idea is that you give this function a composable and it will mount a dummy component for you. So here we create this dummy component with create app, and on setup, it will get the composable. So if you remember our useLocalStorage, the onMounted will be triggered. And yeah, then we mount it, and then our test can then use this little helper. And you see this is not so much code. So we can just use the useSetup, and then whatever composable needs the lifecycle hook will be executed, and we can test it more realistic, but still in isolation. Yeah. So this is our useSetup helper. Now, also maybe one tricky part, if you use provide and inject, I don't know if you ever used it in a project. It's a really cool thing. The basic idea from provide and inject is that if you have a parent component and we have many childs, we can avoid prop drilling easily. The parent component is kind of providing the state for all the childs. Yeah, and that's why in this example we have a stupid useMessage composable. And no matter in the component tree, but this composable is executed, it will always get the state from the parent. Yeah? If the parent provides our message key. And here the message key is just a string called message. And yeah, this is now our composable, and we want to test it. Now, let's try to do the same that we did with useSetup, and let's think first how the test could look. So one test, of course, would be should handle inject message, so that the injection method works. Then it would be nice if we again have a little helper that gets a composable and also gets the keys and values that the parent provides. So that would be cool, because then we know it would work like it would work in a real project. And then, of course, we test that hello world is correct, and the uppercase and get reversed method is working, and we unmounted it. And then also one test, because also don't always test the good cases, also think about what could get worse, what doesn't work. And this is here the should throw error when message is not provided. Yeah, this is also what we should test. And this now we need to think how we can build our little helper. And that's why now for our helper, the difference is that we don't only need one component as an environment, but we need two. We need two because we need a component, I call it here parent, that is calling provide, and we need a component child that is then injecting it, and then we also have our composable. So this is important to understand, that if you want to test a composable in isolation that has provide and inject, it needs to have two components. And yeah, that's why before I give you the actual code, as I say, we call the useInjectSetup, and in the end, this helper will create with create app two components, our parent and our child. And also in the last part, you see then the DOM structure will look like this with a parent and the child. And now let's try to understand the helper, which is a bit more complex than the useSetup, but I hope not so complex. So first we import everything that we need. Then we do some fancy TypeScript with generics, because in our test, if we call this helper, the result, for example, should also be typed and should have the same as the composable. Then we also need the interface on, as you remember on the test, we have an array of key and values, so we should also define how this should look. And then this is how the useInjectSetup looks. The first parameter is the composable, and the second one will be an array of keys and values, because it could be that a composable needs 5 keys provided by the parent. And yeah, we want to be flexible. Then yeah, the result is that's what the composable in the end returns. This is our first component. This is our child component. And the child component, yeah, will also run the setup. And then the parent component, with H, it will render the child. And with the injections for each, it will also provide all the keys. Yeah. So this is our trick here. And then we have 2 components. And then, yeah, we need to mount them. So we mount the parent, because the parent renders the child, and the child is executing the composable. Yeah, you could say it like that. And then we return everything. And yeah, this is just the little helper function to mount the whole app. Similar to the setup. And we also have the unmount. The test can unmount the component. And this is the whole setup, yeah. So yeah, if this can be useful in a project. So I think in every project that I've been, when we have provided an object, I had this as a helper or the Vue setup, and this is really useful. Yeah, and as a little bonus, sorry for the white mode, as a little bonus, because I think provide an object is really cool. And here I built once a simple JSON viewer. Yeah, so the idea is that you have a JSON file and you can just click and see how the structure is. And the way this works is with 2 techniques. The first is recursion, and the second is provide and inject. And yeah, this is our app component. Then we have the Vue JSON viewer, and you see here we use set, so it has all the nodes as a state. It also has a function to toggle on and off the nodes to delete them. And then we use the provide, yeah. And now every component here that has access to the state with inject, no matter in which component tree, because we don't know when we have a JSON how the tree is here. That's why this provide and inject is a nice way. And yeah, if you want to check out this, it's also on my blog. You can read the code. One use case is also, I think, yeah, tabs is also a way where you can use provide and inject and recursion. Yeah, and the last thing regarding provide and inject, if you are curious how the Vue router or Pinia works, in the end they also use provide and inject. Yeah. So yeah, just for thank you. I hope it was useful, and if you ever want to test composables, yeah, I hope you now have all the tools that you need.
Thanks, Alexander. Thank you for bringing this topic for us today. I think it's really, really important. And we actually have a questions in the chat about it. I'm surprised because, I was expecting that nobody, I mean, there is a lot of people that don't like to write tests, right? That's not a surprise for us, but we actually have some questions there. Yeah. So the first question from Andrii. What do you think about testing composables inside Nuxt env, specifically the issue of auto imports?
Nuxt, yeah. To be honest, I only worked with Nuxt for 2 years, I think. So I never had a composable that is using Nuxt env. Yeah, what you can always do is you mock something. Yeah, you can always use Vue mock to test that if there's a problem. But yeah, I don't know. I never had this kind of problem. Need to look it up. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. We have a next one from Maxim. Could you share a link for your blog and code in Vue Playground?
Yeah, sure, I will do that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. And also, Andrii wrote a note about his question. Nuxt uses auto imports extensively, and this is a special type of mocking.
Yeah, and it was also, I think, a project. I was in a project where we were using Vue, and there we used a plugin to auto import things, and their testing was really terrible, kind of. Because I think on the test itself, we also had to import everything. Yeah, I remember that there were some problems with this auto import and testing. I don't know if there's now a better solution for that.
Yeah, there are specific Nuxt testing utils, right? So they're working on it, but it's quite different from like a regular Vue application. But also maybe interesting topic to cover for the next session.
Yeah, might be the good one. So thanks for question and thanks for answer. I think we have one more because Ryan is raised his hand.
Okay, just thank you for this presentation. I just have a question. Do you use Composable for logic separation from the UI or just for usable things? I mean, when you have a large file or large page, I just use the Composable to separate something related to logic and grab it or make it in a separated Composable, then just call it inside the Vue component page. So do you think it's a good practice? So testing this Composable will be interacting directly with the UI and maybe the input from the user. So do you think it's worth it to make a test when separating those logic, and how you can pass the inputs or the user interaction to this Composable if we consider this thing?
Yeah, so probably you know about Vue use, so they only have composables. And I think if you have a project that also has a composable like useLocalStorage, for example, that will be used by many components, this should be in its own file and should also be tested in isolation. But if you have a composable that is only used in one component,
do you think it's a good practice to do this if you have a large maybe logic and you have to clean up your Vue components?
The first step, what I would do when I have a big Vue component, I would use this inline composable technique. Then you could group it, but it's still on the same file. That makes it more readable.
Yes.
And then I think that, yeah. And then the tricky question is if you have a composable that's so complex, but only needed in one component, should you extract it into its own file?
Yes, that's it.
Or not, yeah. And yeah.
Anyone ask if you see it's a good practice? Because I always face this question, and guys say it's good practice, and the others no. You guys stick to the Vue file. We give you a script. You can put all your code inside it. So why are you extracting this to a Composable? Other people say no. You can put it in Composable and make it the isolation between logic and the UI.
Yeah. Yes. It also depends on the project and also on the developers you work with and so on, because everyone has a different taste in the end. And I think also often in software development there is no golden rule. This is the way to do it. Yeah, because it's always what is readable there, and so maybe sometimes it is worth to extract it because it is so complicated, and it's easier to test then, because it would be maybe harder to test, but maybe sometimes also not. So I think there's no golden rule here, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Oh yeah, thanks everyone. I don't see any more questions, and I think that's a good moment to move on to our last but not least speaker. So thanks again, Alexander. That was a good one. And say hello to Andrii Bohdanov. He's our last speaker today. So Andrii is architecting fast web stuff in VF Corporation. He's browser performance nerd functional CSS evangelist, new retrowave enjoyer, and stemming chords when not coding. Nice to see you, Andrii. Microphone to you.
Nice to see you, Pavel. Nice to see you guys. Really glad to be here today and make this presentation. Let me start from sharing my screen. How is the sound, by the way? Is it fine?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, great. So let me just maybe share the browser. Can you see it?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, the topic of my today's talk is how to not write CSS in especially in big projects, right? So actually, this title is quite provoking, right? Because I really like writing CSS, right? And I've been in the front end for more than 20 years now, and was working with CSS in one way or another through these years, pretty much like every day of my career. And I tried so many stuff during these years that I actually want to share with you some of the findings that I had during this journey. And specifically, I want to draw the line between the kind of classical CSS, or like what I call object-oriented CSS writing in the project, and functional CSS, right? So many people heard about the functional programming paradigm. It's getting kind of hyped, but not a lot of people understand that these same principles actually apply to CSS as well, right? So the actual idea here is much deeper than just writing classes on the nodes, right? So let's start. And again, a couple of things about myself. Currently, I'm working in VF Corporation, building stuff that is driving the biggest brands of the company, such as North Face, Vans, and Timberland. Right. So if you go to those websites in NORA and EMEA regions, which is about like maybe 100 websites in total, they all run through one system that actually uses functional CSS by 100%. I can say that I can name myself like a really functional extremist, in the sense that I can prove to you that there is not a single thing in CSS that can be written in the functional way, right? And we will look at those things today in great detail. But first of all, like let's first understand how we got here, right? Because for some people, especially who is like commenting on YouTube and on all those systems, they think that functional CSS appeared as a thing with the invention of Tailwind CSS, right? That got most popular, but in reality, it got way, way earlier than that. And actually, I started to use functional CSS around 10 years ago, right? And been using all of these leaps that are on the screen right now pretty extensively in the real projects. So everything started kind of in the formalized approach from Atomic CSS or ACSS, which is currently called Atomizer. Right, so if I open the link, you can see the website is actually being developed inside of Yahoo. And that actually was quite confusing experience at first. As many people who started it for the first time, I had quite a skeptical reaction to the, and by the way, do you see the link open? I don't know if you see the Atomic. Probably let me reshare the screen to just show you the whole screen. 1 sec. Because some links might not be visible.
And also small thing, Ryan, can you stop sharing your screen, please? I think you forgot about it.
Sorry?
All good. Never mind.
Yeah. So let me go to this Atomizer website, right? So this is actually existing here for 10 years now, and even Azzam, the creator of Tailwind CSS, said that actually they got a lot of stuff borrowed from this framework first, right? But the syntax was quite confusing. If you can see here, not a lot of people actually were using it. Not a lot of people even knew about it, but it was actually quite fun to start from, right? So then there was the invention of Bus CSS, which is also quite interesting toolkit. They call it a CSS toolkit. Tachyons, another library I really suggest you to check. They were the first who really presented this approach of functional CSS styling on scale, right? So they have a huge amount of components, gallery, whole websites built with this approach. And it's quite interesting to check. And then, yeah, appeared the Tailwind CSS, and instantly it got this kind of really heated debate in the CSS space. Many people were starting to call it like a brain tumor, but that actually reminded me the overall situation around Node.js when it first was released in 2012, right? So many people were really negative, and I actually feel that in many ways it actually can be contributed to people not willing to embrace new ideas, right? Because sometimes something can feel confusing and you can make the decision about technology too fast, right? You can just skip it, or, like this is our natural reaction to new things sometimes. But actually, since I had this kind of 3 years of experience in this paradigm, the Tailwind CSS instantly clicked to me. It was like the instant understanding, instant vision on how it can be used. So I used Tailwind CSS on building quite a huge e-commerce back then in 2017, and supported it for like 3 years. Maybe you heard about it, it was called SF Mabry, and also the network for Kare, which is represented on two continents, and in total spans about 40 websites. They were all done with the same system. It actually was really, really fast back that day, right? So even now, actually scores around like 90% of performance on the Lighthouse, and we will actually get into this specific aspect, because today's talk I want to dedicate to more objective things, right? So because there is a lot of points we can discuss about the technology which are subjective, right? So for example, like readability, personal liking, and we can argue about it for years basically. But there is some really concrete points which results to performance, stability, scalability of your project, and they really have the higher priority and should have the higher priority for you when you're building something, right? And we will actually look deeper inside of those things today. Then appeared the Windy CSS, which is, in my opinion, was a revolution in this field, right? It was like a huge step ahead from the Tailwind, in a sense that it actually introduced everything that Tailwind could provide, but including the extra features that we also will look into today, right? And you can go to the website, check it. It's quite minimalistic. Right now, the Windy CSS is kind of sunsetting, right? It means that it's still usable, but the focus is changing. Focus of the supporters changing to another project that we will look next, right? Which is UnoCSS, right? T-Wind was also quite interesting alternative, right? And I will later explain the difference between Tailwind in JS and actual Tailwind, right? There is a difference in how they work, but it's also quite interesting approach to basically writing Tailwind in the browser and compiling it in the browser. But so much stuff. I want to cover everything. And again, if you have questions, please ask. I'll try to read the chat while I'm presenting. But yeah, the main actor, the main player that we will talk about today is UnoCSS. And UnoCSS, you can think about it as really like a ring from Lord of the Rings. It was designed to combine and augment all the CSS frameworks, because it's actually not a framework. It's an engine, which is, you can compare, for example, Tailwind and UnoCSS as a lake and the ocean, right? So the lake can fit inside of the ocean, but not the other way around. And this is really important, because this thing allows you to build your own framework. Some people don't realize that they actually need it, but once you try the taste of it, once you will get the freedom of creating things in the way you want, you will never be able to go back. Because many people are actually asking, what is even the difference between Tailwind and UnoCSS? Why should I even use one or another? We will look at this specific things today. Right? This is like the main goal for you to understand the difference between those two, along with the overall understanding of functional CSS approach. Right? So this is like a small history. That's where we are right now. Now I want you to actually follow along. So I prepared like a small repo, but you also can actually start from the brand new project in Nuxt. They will be using Nuxt 3 latest versions and UnoCSS of the latest version. So here you can see like the really easy steps to add UnoCSS in your Nuxt.js project. You create a Nuxt project, you install two dependencies, which is UnoCSS and connector to the Nuxt module, basically. You specify the module, and that's it. You don't need to do anything else. That's already, you can already start writing CSS in this paradigm. It's already working. But as usual, especially with libraries like Uno, you have tons of configuration that you can specify. And for that, an optional step is to specify the uno config.ts file, right? Where you can actually specify those settings. But it's always optional. An alternative way, if you want to actually see the repo that I created and learn from it, because it has quite a lot of stuff, I created this fun CSS project on GitHub. So you can just copy this link, or I can just put it in the chat if you want, right? And you can clone this repo. It's public. So let me know how it will work, right? Yeah, like Anthony is a really crazy guy. I really like what he's doing. He's like probably one of the smartest guys in the Vue ecosystem today, right? So I admire his work in this field, and yeah, this is his product essentially, along with Vueuse, by the way, right? He's also a person behind Vueuse, which is also a really successful project, and also Windy CSS, right? So kudos to that guy. So here's the project. You can clone it, you can install the dependencies, and then you can start right from actually like looking at it. While you are at it, we will actually discuss the kind of one of the main goals of any website, which is performance, right? So we'll talk about the performance benefits, and we will look at the ways how UnoCSS allows you to optimize the final output bundle of your project by specific, really interesting things, right? So I will show you this in a bit, but first of all, let's highlight these points. Uno allows you to kind of bundle all of the CSS that you write into a single file. That might sound scary for most of you, especially those who are actually used to CSS of 3, 4, 5 megabytes per project. But what I will show you will allow you to write CSS bundles which are below 10 kilobytes minified, right? So I've been creating huge projects, like really, really huge. And the CSS there never grew with a proper approach above something like 10 to 15 kilobytes. 15 kilobytes is like a max. Because in UnoCSS, in functional CSS approach, the CSS actually describes your design system. It's not describing your implementation. And that's what I was telling when I was writing this title. You're not writing CSS to describe your components. You're writing CSS to describe your design system. So the more lean your design system is, the more logical it is, the smaller your CSS will become. But usually it won't ever become large compared to other projects. Right, so real world scenario, what we were able to achieve in our company. Because I'm working at like a really huge corporate company, right? And even getting like one decision made sometimes take months. So I really feel like how it is to actually get a pushback on implementing some specific technology into the project. But luckily, I succeeded in kind of pushing for first implementing Windy CSS in the refactoring of our biggest front end, and also switching to UnoCSS. And as you can see on the screen, initially our system had in total more than 6.5 megabytes of minified CSS. It was reduced to 12 kilobytes without sacrificing any technology benefits, like any functionality. Moreover, we were able to add functionality and still adding the functionality, expanding the project, and the CSS grew to 15 kilobytes in like more than a year. So as I said, like it's really like proven on the really big code bases. So some of the points that you can see here is that, of course, like I can't even draw the line here for this size because it's like it's incomparable. It's 55,400% less, actually, right? Which is kind of, it's not a typo. It's like a real reduction. No CLS, right? Since we are loading, this is really important point that I will demonstrate. Maybe even like let's go to the project that I cloned, right? And what we will do, build, and I'm just using pnpm. This is like a shortcut np. You can use pnpm in a full, like so. Sorry, one sec. Right, but I just use np for short. So we will build the project, and we will see how it actually chunking. And this is Nuxt 3.17, which is running on Vite, and Vite by itself is using rollup to build the project. Right, so let's compile it, and let's see how it actually what it will output in the Nuxt folder or the output folder. So you see our build compiled. Now let's check the output folder, specifically the client folder, so the public folder, sorry. Right, so here we have the Nuxt folder, and here we have some files, and you can see that we actually have this entry point, the error pages, right? So let's investigate what's happening here. This is a default Nuxt error pages, and if I open it, you'll see that here we got some extracted CSS, right? And it's actually using scoped. Probably used it in Vue.js, right? So this is like a regular style. And here I actually prepared to you the component that showcase this scenario of traditional button. So again, like simple component of a button that has some CSS. It doesn't matter if you use style or scoped or without scoped. Rollup will always extract your CSS in a single chunk, no matter how small it is, right? So for every component, especially if the component is reused across many different pages, you will always get a separate chunk for JavaScript and a separate chunk for CSS, right? And you can't do anything about it. Like even if you use manual chunks grouping, you will still won't be able to pack CSS together with JavaScript. This is just how rollup was designed. This is not the issue. Sorry, let me check the chat. Yeah, I'm using Windows. I actually will never go to Mac OS in my life because this is a really conscious choice. Right? I would rather go to Linux. And regarding the UnoCSS, yeah, this is actually hugely customizable. If you didn't use it before, you would even believe how customizable it is, or in what ways it's customizable, right? So, but returning to the point of the CSS, the CSS is extracted in a separate file. It wasn't a problem for Webpack, but once we switched to Vite, and basically the whole ecosystem switched to Vite, because of how rollup works, it always tries to kind of output the CSS in a separate file. But what does it mean for performance? If you build in a website for local grocery, probably nothing, right? You'll have a couple of components, and those things doesn't matter. But if you actually build in website for huge brands or huge services that uses hundreds of components on a kind of in the system, or even thousands of components in the system, that actually affects performance a lot. because for every single component that will be dynamically loaded on your page, the CSS has to load as well. So you need to double all of your XHR requests, and that won't be fun, right? Those things, since HTML will usually load first of the component, will give you the blink of unstyled content. The CSS will load sometime later. It depends on the connection, but the discrepancy will always be there. And this can create CLS, it can create the jumpy behavior, it can show your customers first unstyled components, and then only CSS applies. And the more CSS you have, the worse the situation becomes, right? I actually had this same exact problem on the real large code base, and the solution here was exactly switching to full UnoCSS approach, right? Because you can actually use this approach together with regular CSS, as I use, by the way, here in this project. But my strong suggestion for you is to always use functional approach without any style sections inside of the code base, because it will just make the whole thing work much more efficient. Another really important point about the CSS performance and about how CSS object model is even formed. CSS object model can always be mutated by your styles, especially if they are injected dynamically. Right? So imagine that you have a page that is loaded, then you have some VIF that loads some lazy component in the system, and now you have this portion of styles. And how the system should know what the styles are scoped to? Yeah, you can use like scoped attribute, is one solution here, but scoped has its own problems. So imagine that you just load specific portion of CSS and it modifies something unrelated to your component. It actually will cause the whole repaint, whole restructure of your CSS object model. It needs to change because new styles were introduced, right? It takes some time. We are going through actual paint, we're going through compositing, through updating CSS object model, and so on and so forth, right? So we are redrawing the screen because of this. And this causes a lag on scale. With UnoCSS and functional approach, and let me switch to same component, but with functional approach, it's not only smaller. By the way, like these two components are actually do exactly the same thing. And I will start it. We'll show you like how the overall buttons look. All right. Let me check the chat while it's loading. Yeah, so you can see that those buttons are pretty much identical. I just didn't remove the outline on purpose, just to show them that something is even changing, right? But they have exactly the same behaviors, and of course, it's like a simple example, but you got the idea. Like we will get much deeper than that. And let me switch back, right, and return to the actual performance topic. So once this component is injected, it has a zero CSS that needs to be redrawn or like recalculated. And that means that the overall application of styles shouldn't go through the point of recalculation of CSS object model. It just needs to update the DOM, but the CSS is already there. So even in theory, even if you will have 100,000 components on the page, you will never get flash of unstyled content just because there is no other styles to apply here. All of them are already prepared in advance in your global CSS file that's loaded. That can even be inlined in the HTML if you'd like. There is a choice on that, right? But you can also extract it, and it still will load first with a high critical priority, and nothing will be able to render before this small CSS will load. Right? This is kind of one of the key benefits that not many people actually test out in the real world, because this actually is seen on scale. Right? So this is like a really visible when you have when your project grows in size. let me turn back to presentation, right? So that's what we were able to achieve in our project and still kind of continue this paradigm without no issues. Rendering benefits, something that I already talked about. And also one of the really interesting points regarding all of this is removing of C from CSS, right? So basically the functional approach removes the cascade from CSS. Some people rely on cascade quite heavily. I strongly oppose using it for scalability and simplicity purposes, right? Because when you need to deal with cascade, then you got all of these paradigms, all of these methodologies that build up among CSS, such as BAM, CSS OM, even CSS modules, right? All of them is trying to fix this inherent problem in many ways, which is cascade. So that your CSS is cascading, and you can't kind of scope it by default, so to say, right? Without kind of thinking like some strategy behind your selectors. And then your whole code base turn into really like selectors for the most part, right? If you'll check any legacy or even modern code base that's using this general approach, and I'm talking about a compiled code, probably you're not facing problems with selectors in if you're using SCSS or post-CSS, you're not writing them by hand, but you still get them inside of your compiled CSS, and it grows, right? So functional CSS completely eliminates this problem. It just says, like, why do we need to have cascade at all, right? We apply the styles, and if I go back to the project, you can see that these classes will always apply only to this button. They will never apply on anything outside of it, by design, right? And it's tightly created this scope that you always, even when you analyze and asking this really strategic questions of what my styles apply to, you have the direct answer. You don't need to worry that your styles might leak to some other component if you, for example, didn't follow the BAM methodology good enough, right? So, and this is like a really simple way of keeping things in order, especially again in the huge code bases when you have like 100 people committing code 24 hours a day, right? With hundreds of PRs. And one of the kind of really frequent point about Tailwind, and one of the critic point is that there is so many classes. There is so many classes in the HTML, it's so unreadable, right? So for those people, I actually intentionally prepared this example where I showcase like how you can organize your classes inside of the script setup. And in the template, you can actually have like really lean application of classes, right? So you don't have to keep everything inside of the template, although like I'm personally a big fan of it, right? Because I kind of used to this approach, and in general, I think that HTML is like this final source of truth. I'm also like a big fan of HTMX, by the way, right? So HTML is like this glue that should compose and combine technologies together in many ways, right? But you shouldn't follow that. There is so many different ways of organizing your code base, so it would feel readable for you and readable for people who work with you. This is just a matter of convention. And yeah, like if you compare the actual even size of these simple buttons, this one like fits perfectly on the screen, and you can also move those classes into config if you really like this separation of concerns, right? But believe me, like the more you will work with this approach, the less you will be bound to this kind of stereotypes in many ways. Because I really like that meme from Metrics, when Cypher is telling about the metrics that I no longer see the code. I see like different objects. And the same with CSS specified in the inline way. You can actually, in time, if you spend maybe a couple of weeks with this approach, you'll be able to literally render the markup in your head, because every class that you specify has specific visual representation. It describes the visual change. It doesn't have abstraction attached to it, which is like, for example, here is the button. Let's imagine that you have components such as carousel. So one person will call it carousel, another person will call it swiper, the third person will call it something else, and they all will be right in terms of naming. So what is the right name and what the carousel even means? We can't even know how it will render, how it will style, before we will go into the CSS, right? And this introduces complexity of understanding the code base, especially a large one, right? So when I see something like rounded, I kind of know what it means, right? And by the way, a couple of words about my setup. I'm using WebStorm with UnoCSS plugin that actually shows me exactly what will be rendered from this class. So even if you don't know those classes yet, you can always rely on the tools inside of the IDE that will help you like learn all of this stuff, right? So you know, you can actually investigate what will be generated right away from these utilities, right? Let me return back to my slides. And the same goes about the benefits of build performance. I don't know like how deep you was working with post-CSS or even less SAS. All of those things require a specific compiler. And usually the speed that is outputted from those is quite low, right? In my experience, and pretty much based on many benchmarks, UnoCSS compiler works around 200 times faster than SCSS compiler in the project. And actually it do matters, right? So when you have 5,000 components in the code base and you really want this instant hot module replacement, you will get it from UnoCSS, but you won't be able to get it from SCSS, for example. PostCSS is a bit better, but still, it's like 50 times slower than UnoCSS. It's like blazingly fast in a way how it analyzes the overall code base and generate those classes. But it's even more than that, right? Because if you think about it and really try to understand the main process behind UnoCSS, the creation of actual CSS code is like a byproduct of what it's trying to do to your code base. In general, it's like a string transformer. So you can do way more cooler things than just generating CSS. For example, if I go to the UnoCSS website and try to go to the playground, you can see that you don't even need to write class if you don't want to. This is one of the syntax that is available to you. So you can write classes directly as attributes if you so desire, right? You can even write classes as text. There is a preset called Tagify that allows you to write your CSS as text, HTML text. And some might ask, like, why the hell do I need this? Because, for example, you can generate the full icon from your tag using UnoCSS. There is a preset called Codify, and you can generate the whole SVG or like any type of icon from hundreds of thousands of icons right out of the box dynamically just with UnoCSS, right? And you can look at it by checking those presets, right? So we have icons here, right? And there is even animated icons that you can insert with classes or even with text if you so desire, right? There is like specific presets for that. But let's return back. So really smart and parallel processing allows for really fast performance, which is unparalleled right now in the ecosystem. And the overall like, scalability benefits of really heavy code bases, because again, as I said initially, this overall approach describes your design system. So first, you need to spend time on really thinking through your design system, what type of fonts you plan to use, what type of colors, what type of like even spacing that you would like to use in your project. You need to know it in advance. You need to have like a full understanding of your constraints, and only then you need to style the pages, right? And this is like a much more mature and integral way of developing complex systems, just because it favors the simplicity. Your design system should be simple in order to grow. If it's too complex, if it's convoluted, if you can't predict what should happen in your next page, probably you are not really good architect, right? And Uno gives you all the tools to really build the boundaries for your team. That's why I like it so much, because sometimes I need to guide 30, 40 people, 50 people in the teams on specific approaches on how to do stuff in the code base. And this tool allows me to set the healthy boundaries that not only make the whole system consistent, but also allow people to be more relaxed, right? So they have specific boundaries of what they can use. They know the system exactly. It's all auto-completed for them. They don't need to think about like what type of margin or padding they need to apply, right? It's all predefined and thought through for them, right? That's first on the level of utilities, as tokens, and then on the level of components and their integration together. So for them, the whole development experience becomes a breeze. And some people actually work with me in this who are present today, so they can confirm, right, if I'm telling the truth. Pavel, Mironov can confirm probably. Yeah, so this is like a small comparison. I wouldn't like fix on it for too long, right? You can just check it, and I can share the presentation. You can look at it later, right? And now let's go directly to the code base and see how it all organized. Hopefully I still have time for it, because there's so much stuff to cover. As you may see, like the overall structure of the project is quite simple and straightforward out of the box for any typical Nuxt project. What I got from the dependencies is Nuxt ESLint in order to kind of even structure the code. There is a specific plugin for ESLint config for UnoCSS that allows you to even sort your classes in predictable order, which is really beneficial for further analysis of the code base, extracting some similarities, and creating shortcuts. Guiding shortcuts, we will look at what it is. If you go to the unoconfig file for configuration, you'll see it's also pretty minimalistic. So you don't need to write huge amount of configurations. You just specify presets, and that's it, right? So here I'm starting from a preset Wind3, which is right now a default one. It's actually Windy3/Tailwind preset. And for those that didn't use it before, again, like as I said, you can create any framework with UnoCSS, and it supports all the features of Tailwind, both 3 and 4, plus many other features that you can also take from other frameworks. For example, you can use the style of tachyons if you want. You can use the style of atomic CSS. You can use any style that you like, and even use those together, right? So here I'm trying to keep it simple. The preset Win3, which is default one, and here I create my own preset. And there is different ways how you can organize this stuff. My recommendation is to always create your own preset where you specify all of your settings that you can reuse. You can actually place this preset in the separate NPM module and install it the same way that you do for any other dependency and just import from it. So let's look at this preset. What's inside? First, I give it a name, right? And then there is some things in here that Uno respects as a configuration. First is preflights. Preflights can be used to inject the code that is global. So this is basically kind of a reset type of code. And you can actually write like a normal, absolutely normal CSS for this. For example, here, I specify a really minimal reset. You can also install reset as a dependency if you want, right? But here, I actually keep it minimal. So I'm just setting the margin 0 on the body. And I resetting the actual color of default border color for all elements, right? To black. And this is just like a option that you can do. You can write all the configuration behind the CSS variables that Tailwind uses if you know how they work, right? But here's the place to set your predefined preliminary styles for the whole system globally, right? Because there's sometimes people ask like, how can I even specify those styles globally if I want, without attachment to specific component? Returning back, and again, let me just launch the this again, right? So if I select, you'll see that on body actually get the style applied and comes from Uno, right? It's all compiled to one file. One really important point to note is that Uno has full integration with Nuxt DevTools. So here, if I open Nuxt DevTools and go to UnoCSS, I have this really nice analyzer, right? That gives me not only all the CSS that's been generated so far for the project. As you can see, it's pretty minimal, but it also gives me the analyzation of how frequently I use specific utility, right? So I can use py 4 times, right? And now, I reflect 6 times. Now imagine how much actual CSS I'm saving, even with these small utilities. I never duplicated the flex property, for example. I always point to it with the class. And that means that every time I write something new in the component with classes, I always reference an existing CSS. And that's how it actually getting so small, right? No. Like for DevTools for Vue, this is specific to Nuxt. And again, that's why I always recommend using Nuxt with Vue, just because it provides these additional benefits. Vue DevTools doesn't have this integration because it's a bit aimed at a different purpose, right? Because Nuxt really extends these possibilities. It's not only about Vue, sorry, not about UnoCSS, it's also about the integrations with ESLint, integrations with your components, integrations with Vue use if you use it in the system. So I really recommend you checking it out, because this is like placing Vue development on completely different level of enjoyment. Right, so here I can analyze the utilities. Here I can check what CSS is getting generated. Here I can check my size of CSS. So you can see it's right now just a bit more than 1 kilobyte gzip, which is quite nice, right? And yeah, like this is actually gives me all of the different layers I got. About layers, I will tell a bit later how I can use them. And here you can actually check where your classes even used. So for example, if you want to check where you use BG green 6 2 times, this is the components. And if I click on it, it will point me directly to my ID here. Right, so I need to make some preliminary connections, but yeah, you can actually navigate directly to the component that uses this class. It's really, really convenient, right? So, and this is the structure of the components in general that uses those utilities. You can also use the REPL. The REPL is like exactly the same thing that I showed you before, the playground. And you can actually experiment. If you want to check how your specific configuration is working, what is generating, you can do it here, right? So for example, you're not sure like what text Azzam will generate. This is the actual CSS. If you want to understand, for example, what is behind MT4 or MT3, this is the actual style that's being generated. Really, really convenient, right? So let's go back and explore kind of the preset, or continue exploring the preset. Right, so we looked at the reset. There is also, you can actually specify presets inside of the presets, which is kind of an inception-like, right? So you can just, for example, here I'm using the preset fonts, and here you can see how easy it is to specify Google font. There is no CSS that you need to write to actually connect Google fonts to your system. You can just tell Uno that, you know what, I want to use Google as a provider, and I want to use Roboto. Or you can just name different fonts. And that will instantly be available. As you can see here, I'm using Roboto here, right? So Uno did all the heavy lifting and provided this, if I specify it here, it generated all of this correctly, and we can just reference the class of font sans, right? That's available from the utilities. In order to kind of understand what's available, you can go to interactive docs, right? So here you can start typing specific class like font sans, and here it will give you all of the utilities that actually match your search, right? So this is a default one. Utilities can be mutated by presets, as we've seen before, right? So once you install specific font, this utility, this token can mean something else. And again, like it's really important to understand that the tokenized system, it's not tied. You can actually modify any token, and it can mean anything, basically, right? It doesn't mean that the class flex should actually apply display flex. It can be anything. It's up to you to decide. But this is like what the default setup is, right? So next is rules. Rules is also really interesting in the sense that you can actually modify. Uno is basically a set of rules, nothing more, right? And you can add your own rules. You can say, for example, I want to use the duration class specifically, right? So let's check this class, right? So this class doesn't exist in Uno, although right now it generates stuff because I tell it so. Because I said that I actually want to use this large or lengthy class like this, right? I just created a rule that tells Uno to do this. I said that this duration, if it's duration, I will take default value from a sim, right, and apply it. And that's how I can even create my own utilities. That's what I'm saying about the ultimate flexibility, is that you're not limited to any utility that exists in Uno today. You can always build your own. You can actually build your own framework of utilities if you want, how you want. Yeah, so moving next. And again, sorry for like this really brief explanation, because I just want to cover a lot of information, but hopefully on the next sessions I can go into bigger detail about every aspect of how those can be created. Here we have shortcuts. Shortcuts is really like something in between of the component and actual utility, right? So it's kind of a combination of some utilities for brevity, right? Some people actually completely misunderstand what shortcuts is. They think that this is something to create higher level CSS with BEM, which is completely wrong, right? So shortcuts was never designed to replace utilities CSS approach. It just allows for a bit higher abstraction. So for example, maybe in my code base, I don't like to write inline flex class. I want to go with a shorter name. That's it. I just specify iflex and I can use it. This is a shortcut. Or I can combine two classes into one. Flex column can become fcol, or whatever you can say, like fc. And then it becomes more and more like tachyons, because tachyons really like, syntax really like this kind of a short classes. Center can combine item center, justified center classes, right? And you're not even limited to just simple utilities. You can generate them really kind of in expression like syntax. So here I'm doing something really interesting. I created the active selector or variant, which means that I combine hover and active pseudo classes into one for every single utility. So for example, instead of writing, sometimes, and we will see it a lot in the Tailwind code bases, people duplicate so much stuff. You know, like so much stuff is duplicated. For example, if I want to apply hover, something like color amber, and I also want the same one for active for the button. Why not just use active, right? And now I apply for them both. So now this is the way of actually make the utilities look smaller in the template. So that way, and you even see immediately what it generates for you, right? So it's all connected to your presets. The plugin is really smart. So it shows how much CSS is outputted. And now when I was mentioning that you always reference existing CSS, now imagine how much CSS you won't actually write, you will save by using this approach. You just write active cmber, and that's what is generating. It's generating exact color from a design system. It applies CSS variables. It applies specific selectors, and it places in a specific layer, which is quite insane. You shouldn't even stop there, because you can, why not wrap it in media query like this, right? It's also something that I just created. And this specific rule, it will create the specific media query Because, for example, if I demonstrated it with this hover, what it actually means. So you see, the media query was generated for the hover find state. We basically say apply this hover only on the devices that has a mouse, right, the pointer, which is fine. So that's how easy it is. If you want to apply specific class with kind of higher importance, what you do is just you add exclamation mark, sorry, at the end or the start, and suddenly your utilities become important, right? So this is like a really, really flexible system for generating your style with like a most elegant, most minimal interface you can think of, right? It's like, in some ways, it's like a TypeScript for CSS. It's like a pseudo language or higher level language for utilities. But let's return back to our theme, to our presets. We covered shortcuts. The theme, one of the most popular and kind of most important points of your modification that actually connects your classes to the design system is a theme. In the theme, you can define all tokens that you use, which is actually specific to your design, such as colors, typography, fonts, animations, anything you can think of. And by the way, I still recommend using Tailwind CSS documentation for many of those things because Uno actually follows Tailwind in many aspects, right? So here, Tailwind has a huge documentation, really, really nice documentation. Big kudos to Azzam for creating it, and many people on this project, because they have like a really the best docs, in my opinion, and they are like even much greater than UnoCSS, because UnoCSS tries to only describe the mechanism behind generation. But if you need specific knowledge about how your preset works, you probably need to go to that framework website, such as Tailwind, right? And here, if I specify the theme, you'll find it's customizing your theme. Right now, it specifies the Tailwind 4 already. Previously, it was Tailwind 3. UnoCSS supports both, right? That's why you can just find the documentation for Tailwind 3 here. And to actually have something completely different, right? So theme configuration, you can see what you can specify inside of the theme. It's just basically your TypeScript file that can contain screen sizes like media breakpoints, font family, border radius. There is a link to full default theme. If you're curious what's going into defaults, you can read through all of these default values that you can actually modify, right? And you don't have to, since Uno always generates what you use, you shouldn't be concerned with the size of your theme. Basically, you can define your whole design system, but even if you don't use something in the code base, it will never be generated. That's another really, really important aspect that unlike old days, when the whole CSS file was generated and then we needed to use some kind of a purge mechanism, there is no need to do this. There is just-in-time compilation that's happening. By the way, this mechanism was taken from Windy CSS into Tailwind, right? So those frameworks give each other really nice challenges, right? A really nice concurrency and grow from each other, which is really nice. Right, so here you can see that I specified two colors, which are custom. You can see them here. And if I go to the bottom, even go to the website, you can see that actually this is the background that's being used. Right, so here I specified BG brand 2, and you can see that this class got generated. Not only it got converted to a specific format for easy modification of transparency. For example, I can just override in JavaScript this CSS variable and set it to something like 0.3. And you can see I can actually change the color transparency without modifying the color, which is really convenient, right? But it also generated the comment of which color it really is at the end for your convenience. And this will be removed in the production bundle, right? So there is a huge amount of internal optimizations even to CSS that's been generated. For example, if you use different selectors for the same CSS property, they will be combined into one, right, in the CSS. You don't need to care about this. Uno will analyze all of this for you. So this is the theme, of course, again, like really briefly, just to show you like the whole picture. The variants, another really huge point, really huge topic. So here you can actually define new variants, new ways of behavior of your utilities. For example, previously you've seen that I added important here for make this property kind of have the higher priority. Well, what if I don't want to add important? But I'm so concerned with the overall size of my bundle that I have purist, right? It's like importance are bad, as usually people like to say, right? So, of course, like it's not bad actually, but yeah, sometimes people have these kind of ideas. So what if I don't want to use this important? How else I can override the style? I can actually write my own plugin for this, my own variant. And for example, and again, like one thing that I can even do without any custom code is specifying the layer to which I will output my CSS. I don't know how many of you use CSS layers because it's quite new technology, but still it allows you to modify the order of your styles independently of your selectors. So you're not bound to selectors to change the order of your styles, right? So how you can actually move the styles to another layer in UnoCSS? You just write Uno layer and give it another layer. You can say one, you can say override, however you want. This will generate on the fly, right? And now, if I roll over, you see the new layer was instantly created, and these styles went into the new layer. And this layer will actually be sorted alphabetically. So if you named it started with O, it will actually fall beneath all the other layers. And this style will override another utility with another color. For example, if I specify C white here, let's actually check. Right? So here I'm specifying this amber, and we'll see how it will apply. Let me check. It's already on the, yeah. So I see yellow, or this orange color got applied because it has higher specificity due to the another layer. Right? So it's been moved to a completely different layer. And you can check that, for example, in the playground, you can actually experiment with all of this here. You can see it, even like animations are quite easy to do, right, with this. So there is no limitation, because some people are actually afraid of animations. Say like, I can't do animations in Uno. Yes, you can. Right, so if I do this exactly same thing here, I will just copy those classes to prove you the point. And by the way, this is all using this T-Wint approach. Like all of this whole environment is compiling the classes in the browser. It's extremely fast, crazily fast, right? Although it's all runtime, not build time, right? So let me just do this. And you can see that right now only the C white is shown. But why the hell? Where is my C amber? It's actually there, but it's in this different layer. So you see now the dynamically new layer got created, and now I see both, right? And now I see the kind of the ordering of the layers. If I name this something like A, you see that the new layer A got created, and now it's actually getting to be first, right? So I can control the order even with letters of alphabet, but if I actually want to name my specific layer overrides with it to be on the top, Uno supports that as well. It allows you to modify the layers, and you can check it in the docs. So here, like you have the config layers, and it actually allows you to modify the Z index, if you will, of your layers or the order, independently of the alphabet, right? But we can go even further than that. Imagine that I don't want to write every time this Uno layer. I've probably seen that it's too long. It should be smaller, right? This is my just kind of idea. How can I do it differently? I can come up with my own syntax. For example, instead of the question, exclamation mark, what if I want to use pipe for this type of override? Just the pipe. How can I pull it off? For that, I created this variant. And you see that if the utility starts with pipe, I remove this pipe and pass it forward to overrides layer. So you kind of say, like, I'm propagating the utility in exactly the same way it's written without the pipe to the overrides layer. And now I got exactly the same behavior, but with a succinct syntax. As you can see, it went to overrides. How cool is that? Right? So maybe any questions so far?
Oh, you're talking about this in that way that I already started to believe that Uno will even solve my life problems as well.
Yeah, this is quite interesting, right? And this is like what I show you today is like a tip of the iceberg, really, right? This is not even covering 1% of what's possible, and kind of probably like I plan to record the whole course on YouTube about UnoCSS, because again, like one of the shortcomings of this framework is its niche kind of underground auditory, right? So many people right now know about the Tailwind because it somehow got popular, and Azzam Bohdanov did a huge work on popularizing it. Kudos to him, by the way. But many people really don't even know that Uno exists, and how cool is this, right? So I really want to, even like this session was aimed towards popularizing it, open it to much more people, because it's really a game changer in CSS, in my opinion, like completely mind-blowing way of expressing complex ideas in a simple way. So yeah, like I don't know how much time I still have. I can talk about it for hours, but realistically speaking, I will provide you the link to the repo. You can explore it. It has like all of this pre-set up, right? So you can learn from it, ask questions. You can find me in LinkedIn or like through other contacts that I shared. And I'm always open to share this knowledge, guys. So just let me know, and I can provide you much more information about this framework. Yeah, see the question?
Okay, I have just a small idea. If you can share some maybe advices on how we can work with design team to make this happen, because what we're getting from Figma, it's not really that well structured. It's not really well tokenized. It's pretty random. So we get random value for sizes, we get random value for colors. It's pretty hard to shoelace into this, like into small classes. So yeah, if you have some ideas, please share.
First of all, like I want to say that the discrepancy of the design system shouldn't stop you from applying this approach. Of course, the better your design system will be, the more discipline you will get from UX, the better, right? So you will just have like a smaller footprint of your CSS, but still, imagine going from like 7 or 6 megabytes of CSS to like even 100 kilobytes, which is, in my opinion, like insane size to this type of approach, right? So in order to get to 100 kilobytes of CSS, you need to really kind of do the things in the wrong way, so to say, right? You need to have like a completely broken design system. But of course, like I went through this myself, right? So as I said, like I'm working in a corporate environment. On the basis of every day, I'm working not with just random people like from the team. I'm talking with companies who are doing UX. Sometimes it's like 3 different companies who is doing website design for a single brand. So it's really, really challenging. So of course, there's a lot of work on the overall culture, right? There is no question about that. The tool can't solve the cultural problems. If people aren't disciplined and they actually make direct errors in the design, well, they need to fix them, right? Simple as that. And this is something that developers should actually demand from UX. You need to work with them. You need to educate people, right, about the proper approaches, about the best practices. This is actually what I do in my company as well, like as a developer advocate. Yeah, there is such a role that I have in the company, and I recorded more than 100 hours of educational materials for all layers of organization, from product owners to designers and developers included. So it's a huge work every day, right? But it's worth it, right? Once you'll get to this type of elegance, if you will, you can grow. Without elegance, without specific boundary, like I really like this phrase that the art is born in the limitation. Many people don't understand this, that you need to have some boundaries in order to kind of create something beautiful. You can't just create stuff out of nothing with no discipline. You need to be really laser focused on the approach. You need to have a fully conscious idea behind what you build and how you building it and what you want to get as a result. Only that separates the successful businesses, successful ideas from not successful. That's just my opinion, right? So something like this.
Thank you.
Well, I do think we have a lot of discussion, and chat is very active today, especially about the UnoCSS and what it can do and what cannot. And I do believe that you will be able to visit our other meetups and share some extra details about UnoCSS and some tips and tricks. For example, I know that Uno have this beautiful feature, which is grouping. That should be also,
Quickly want to show it if people didn't know it, because this is what separates it from Tailwind as well, right? So you can actually do it like this, right? You can group your utilities like so, and it will still work. So you don't need to duplicate this MD every time. You don't need to duplicate, like, for example, MD, hover, dark for the dark theme. You can do all of that and it will still work, right? So you don't need to duplicate anything. You can combine so many different selectors in one, and it's really beautiful, even from a point of how you write your classes. There is not this kind of a huge number of classes as in Tailwind. They all like really make sense.
Yeah, and there is many of those things.
Yeah, of course. It's a huge framework, and as I said, like too many hours needed to tell about everything.
Yeah, maybe even more. Can just imagine if we are talking about some expression of best practices, how to utilize it.
Yeah, imagine fitting like 10 years of this type of approach into like 30 minutes. It's really challenging.
Yeah, so that was really amazing and really big amount of information. It's mind-blowing, can be mind-blowing for someone, sorry. And it's just really amazing. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks guys for being here with me. I do appreciate the audience as well. Thanks.
Yeah, so that's it for today, guys. It took a little bit longer than usual, but I do believe that was really great meetup today with a lot of information, and everybody learned something for you. So I wish to say thank you again for all of the speakers today. You guys really stars. So see you then on the next meetup number 10 on the next month. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.